Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Scrum Pulse. My name's Dave West. I'll be your host and also presenter. How fabulous is that? Hope you're all having a fantastic day. Before I get started on the actual presentation, which I'm excited to share with you, luckily I've got a great colleague and collaborator to share this presentation with, which will be fantastic. I wanted to make sure we went through some housekeeping rules. In GoToWebinar, you'll see down the right-hand side the ability to ask questions and to also chat. Your microphones are muted, primarily because, not that we don't want to hear you, but primarily because, you get dogs barking in the background, ambulances, people shouting at you, and the like. So they're muted, but you'll have the ability to interact with with us and with some people that are online via the questions, which you'll see. There's a section you can do questions. You can type in your question and somebody will answer it. Feel free to use that. Or for particular like chatty kind of things, feel free to use the chat as well. I can't promise we'll get to every question. I know that we have people online to do have any technical questions around GoToWebinar. And of course, Stefan and myself, who I haven't introduced yet, will try to answer any questions that are relevant. Actually, and that brings me actually to today's webinar. So this is the Scrum Master Trends Survey Scrum Pulse. And we're very fortunate to have Stefan Wolpers from Berlin, Germany, runs an organization called Age of the Product, who we partnered with on this survey. Stefan, do you want to say hi to our listeners and viewers?
No, absolutely. Hi, my name is Stefan. I'm from Berlin, and I'm happy to be here.
Great. We have, so for all the really difficult questions, Stefan will be answering those. For any light and fun ones, that'll be me. So my name is Dave West. As I said at the start, I'm the CEO and product owner here at Scrum.org. You can see both Stefan and myself's contact information. Feel free to ping us, send us, emails and the like. We're actually very interested in this subject, so we're here to continue the discussion after this presentation. Look how sensible he looks in his picture and how odd I look in mine. I think I need to get a nice wooden background for my future, Stefan. So cool. So who are we, Scrum.org? If you haven't attended one of these Scrum Pulses before, or you've just accidentally stumbled upon the recording, Scrum.org is the home of Scrum. We live in three sort of worlds. We do training, about 3,000 people around the world, delivered by professional Scrum trainers, independent yet connected trainers. Really interesting in all sorts of places, ranging from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe, though I think that's called something else now. We do certification. A lot of people take the assessments, about 10, 12,000 people a month take those. And we maintain a body of knowledge and a professional community of trainers and training organizations that really sort of drive forward the mission. We were founded by the co-creator of Scrum and luminary in industry, Ken Schwaber. He's my boss, so he's the guy that shouts at me, and it's awesome to work in this fantastic organization. But today we're going to be talking about the Scrum Master Trends Survey, and this is a survey that Stefan and Age of the Product have been doing for quite some time, and they partnered with us this year to sort of increase its scope, I guess, and the like. And really because of this very simple change that we're seeing in the industry. Obviously, Scrum Master was a term that Ken and Jeff coined 20-something years ago to describe this pivotal role in a Scrum team and an Agile transformation around enabling, facilitating, creating the environment for Scrum to be successful. And it's interesting that we aren't the only people that think that now. You see that LinkedIn Scrum Master was one of the most promising jobs for 2019. I wonder what it was promising. And we saw the Glassdoor over there, they had a survey, best jobs 2019. So the Scrum Master role has definitely raised its prominence and importance in organizations, as many organizations are trying to do Scrum. Millions of people every day do Scrum. It's incredible the range of organizations that are doing Scrum. And the Scrum Master role is significantly important in that change. Stefan, you're in Germany, very different market from sunny Burlington, Massachusetts here, and America. But what do you see around the Scrum Master role?
Huge demand. So currently, if you're available in a professional capacity, you can choose. Turn down offers, and we see salaries go up. And actually, the job search is getting more professional. So 2 years ago, you saw ridiculous job postings, what the Scrum Master is supposed to do. I hope we already had some influence here. So by now, the job offerings are significantly more professional as far as the talents are concerned that Scrum Master is supposed to have, and most importantly, what they are supposed to deliver to the organization.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a maturity and a growth in maturity. That's something that we're seeing increasingly. Organizations are making this a proper job in that organization with a clear, defined set of responsibilities, and really sort of doubling down on its pivotal change. But we've got a survey that's all about that. So that drove us to develop to work with Stefan and develop additional questions and the like around the Scrum Master Trends survey. So let's jump into the survey and talk about who took it. This is sort of a bit boring, isn't it? But it sort of provides some context for you guys, particularly if you're looking at this. And by all means, download it. I recommend you download it. When you're looking at it, is it relevant to me? You'll see that the majority, it's Europe and North America predominantly in terms of regions. Age, interestingly, pretty much all over the place, with a strong emphasis in the sort of middle. Gender, well, unfortunately, I think that's illustrative of our industries and our, complex product development. However, females were well represented, I think. And then organizations, obviously a lot of software companies, but you'll see some other stuff. And in terms of education, no surprise, it's a profession. A lot of people, bachelor degrees, master's degrees, and the like. And that's particularly, I also think, true because of North America and Europe bias. But so a well sort of grounded survey, pretty worldwide. You could argue that Asia and Africa are not as well represented, and that's true. The organization side, which I think is probably more interesting than some of those other things, is also interesting because it's pretty even around this. With perhaps a little bit more representation of large organizations. Stefan, are we seeing Scrum now sort of like break into sort of large organizations? Is that what we're seeing?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think we've been talking about it for 2 decades by now, but the chasm has been certainly crossed. By now, we are more addressing the laggards. And we see even legacy industries, let me put it this way, now jumping on the bandwagon, right? So I think this is also one of the reasons that we have a quite high percentage of large organizations being represented here. So financial industries, for example, is a strong playing field.
Yeah, so you're saying as we move into more broad, out of just software, software companies tend to be smaller, into other industrial sectors and segments, you'll see a lot more of a size. I mean, banks is a great example. So when we see, Scrum being practiced and agility being practiced by banks, I mean, ultimately they're digital enterprises anyway. So it's really, crucial that they're agile and more responsive, and their competitors are also software companies, right? So it's kind of that's interesting, I think, on itself. The other thing though that is interesting is around change, right? So the thing that that one of the key roles of the Scrum Master is to drive change in organizations. Even though it's in the Scrum Guide, it's perhaps not as well described as that. No insult to Jeff and Ken. Obviously, the Scrum Guide's awesome. But what we see though is that that Scrum Masters now are playing more of an active role in launching and being part of it. That doesn't mean that some change happens without them, but agile transitions, the Scrum Master role is pivotal. Stefan, do you see Scrum Masters being treated in that way to change organizations and the like?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's a question of gaining reputation over time. So what we observe, at least what I observe among my clients, is that we now see more departments moving to Scrum beyond engineering. So HR and finance and PR, for example, very interesting on the one side. And on the other side, I believe a lot of people by now understand that transitions work better if you do not think in terms of let's get the engineers going, and after that we take on the rest of the organization, because it's not working this way. So you have to basically reach out into the rest of the organization quite immediately. And then we're actually back to the Scrum Guide, promoting Scrum as described in the Scrum Guide and the rest of the organization.
There was one interesting, when Scrum was developed, so I'm actually speaking to you from Burlington, Massachusetts. Bizarrely, this was the actual office, well, not this office, it's actually downstairs, but we've moved a bit since then. But this was the first building that Scrum was ever practiced. A company called Easel, medical device organization that Jeff Sutherland was the CTO, and he brought in Ken to help drive the software development. What's interesting is when it was brought in, Jeff obviously brought his experiences and his learning from Harvard around lean and the like, and Toyota, the Toyota manufacturing process, lean thinking. One interesting aspect of Toyota, when you read the Toyota way and you work with Toyota, also a big Scrum shop, you feel this responsibility of the managers, dare I call them Scrum Masters, to drive the ideas of Toyota and the Toyota way into the organization outside of their own domain, but into every other domain. And I see, Stefan, it's interesting, I see that being actually a realization of that ultimate sort of model for Scrum. I see that they're driving these ideas, hey, let's organize work into small batches. Let's call them a sprint. Why not? How about we meet frequently, driving those ideas throughout the organization, which is great. And we're seeing some evidence that that's starting to happen. Still not enough though. I'd love to see that, not 100%, but a significant percentage. So when we talk about driving change into organizations, obviously, I don't know, Stefan, if you get this, everybody starts thinking about scaling frameworks, right? So this question was something that we, obviously added to the survey this year. And what's interesting is that that 49% don't actually use a scaling framework. I thought that was a surprise. I expected that they would. But interestingly, they just sort of like making it up as they go along in a positive way, I assume. But then for the 51% that were, what we're seeing is obviously Scaled Agile Framework has become is the most popular. But then this other number, which is actually higher than the SAFe, is using multiple frameworks. So maybe using SAFe and the ideas of LESS or DAD or Nexus, obviously. Nexus, I wrote a book with some colleagues on that, so I was a little bit biased. Awesome set of ideas, just for the record. But that's kind of interesting. What do you think, Stefan?
I think it's just a reflection of the typical cherry picking that you can see in the operational reality in large organizations. I mean, it's always appealing to say, okay, let's start with a clean slate, and it's a nice rollout, and we stick to the letters of the book, but it never works that way. You simply don't have the opportunity. I mean, you can't shut down a part of the organization for 6 months just because you now want to implement X properly, right? You don't have the time, so it's a form of incremental approach too. And while you're at it, you start cherry picking from different networks and see what is working in your context. I'm not surprised.
I mean, it's sort of like the one thing that most people miss when they listen to the Spotify is obviously very popular at the moment, right? And when they listen to the videos, one thing that they miss, and I missed it actually the first time I listened to them. It was awesome. Love Spotify, love your product and the like. But what was funny was that I missed and by the way, you need to do what's right for your organization. This is just the ideas that we had. The first important point of Spotify is don't follow Spotify unless you're Spotify. And I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of interesting. You have to build the models that work for you. But obviously look at Spotify, look at Nexus, SAFe, LESS, and use all of these ideas to build an approach that works for you. It's kind of like exciting that we're at that stage, even though it's only 29%, but that's still significant percentage of people that are using multiple frameworks.
Which I believe is a good trend. I mean, just copying a framework from another organization is never going to work. And package agile is doubtful at best, I would say. You really need to I mean, it's like training, you know. It's not enough that the coach is yelling at you. You have to actually do the work and sweat, right? And this is the outcome of it. You pick your own way of doing it.
There is no silver bullet. You heard it there from Stefan, who trains very hard. He's a very fit gentleman, but there is no silver bullet, right? I mean, that's just
Nope.
the way it is. It's funny. I've got an admission, Stefan, so bear with me. I was the RUP product manager once, Rational Unified Process. Awesome process model. Obviously now it's considered to be the evil empire, but what's interesting is I realized quite quickly that there was two pressures on me always. One was to make it simpler to use, and the other one was to add stuff to support a particular situation or the like. Those two were opposites. I ended up compromising and creating and working on and adding more and more stuff to the process model to try to be that silver bullet. And I realized quite quickly that as you added more, as it became more and more complicated, it was harder and harder to implement, which ultimately resulted in it failing, and the rise of agile frameworks, XP and Scrum being the first ones and the most popular. So it's just interesting. I think we're starting to see something like similar on some of the other frameworks.
But the compelling pitch of Scrum, you know, lightweight yet sufficient. You know, that's why it's always funny to see people who never heard of Scrum before. I mean, there's still some out there who say, well, how hard can it be? You know, the manual is 18 pages. No, give it to me, and 2 hours later I can do this. You know? And then you start smiling. Okay,
yeah,
give it a try.
It's funny though. Yeah, it's 18, 19 pages because there's the thing at the trademarks at the bottom. But what's interesting is that I'm still wrestling with it every sprint. You know, every sprint I'm like, oh damn it, I wish I'd done that. Oh gosh. And it's funny, we have a train the trainer class running at the moment for professional Scrum trainers, and it's just funny. These people are really experienced, and they're still experiencing with their clients or the same problems that we've been experiencing a long time. Human, by very nature, what Scrum does is it exposes the challenges, right? It doesn't fix them, and those challenges just continue.
That's the point.
And yeah, I guess that's the point. But this is, as you rightly said, a really good trend that people are starting to step back from the dogma, the prescription, the silver bullet, and say, hey, what works for me? Let's look at all these different things.
It's one of my very first questions always. Are you prepared that we will find out all the things that are wrong in your organization? Are you prepared? A, to learn, and B, then to deal with it. You know, because if not, we should probably reconsider this here.
Yeah, that's always an interesting. So my wife's a very, very fit personal trainer type person, and she's like, yeah, I always tell people they're going to have a lot of pain during this class, but I'm not sure they're as prepared as they thought they were. And I think it's yes, you're going to discover lots of stuff, but maybe this chart sums up. We're starting to see people that are a lot more experienced. I think we're getting to see, and I guess it's been around 20 years, Stefan, right? So I think it was over 26 years ago in this office. However, it wasn't in mainstream for another 5 years as Ken and Jeff refined it. And then it was delivered at Uppsala in 96 was the first sort of formal delivery of the Scrum ideas, though they were working on it in multiple places around that. So one thing that's interesting is that we are starting to now see, over 50% have worked on more than 10 projects. One day I hope that we forget to talk about projects and we don't have to talk about projects anymore, but they've worked on at least 10 endeavors. Scrum teams working together, how many Scrum teams they've worked with, the numbers start getting larger, and actually sort of like getting more experience, right? Over 45% have had 2 years of experience, more than 2 years experience, which is which is, I mean, not 10 yet, but that's starting to bode well. And it's consistent with what we see. We obviously launched last year, I guess, Professional Scrum Master 2. And we're starting to see, I noticed this month, that the numbers are starting to grow around that, particularly in our more mature markets, the Netherlands, Benelux, Germany. We're starting to see a lot of more experience, and you the German way is obviously it's great because you come with a big list of questions, what it means every course, which is good to see. And then parts of America as well. Do you see? Are you having more? I hate to say intelligent conversations, but more experienced type conversations with Scrum Masters today?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you can easily detect us by the topics that become the center of the communication and discussion. So, for example, what's very popular at the moment is liberating structures. So how can I improve my retrospectives in a different way? How can I make it more compelling and create more engagement? Or how can we do the backlog refinement in a more proper way, using liberating structures for this? And this is particularly, again, it's covering a bit this outreach into the rest of the organization. It's always thinking about, okay, my customers are probably the stakeholders. How can I make them happy? How can I turn this into something more enjoyable that has a better outcome for them?
Yeah.
So it's really moving away from the mechanics, how long is a sprint review or something like that, more to how can I improve the experience itself? And this is really, really promising from my perspective.
Yeah, and it's funny you talk about liberating structures. Obviously, that's a key part of PSM 2, the class. But what's interesting about that is that it sort of highlights the fact that a lot of people say, "Hey, why isn't this called an Agile coach? Why is it called a Scrum Master?" And ultimately, what we see is facilitation is a key part of whoever's doing this role. Could be called, by the way, it can be called an Agile coach. I don't really care, but the Scrum Master role is more than just coaching. The role is more than just coaching. It's facilitation, it's leadership, it's coaching, it's, all of these stances. Barry Overham wrote a really good piece on the stances of a Scrum Master. All of these stances are crucial to effectively being able to deliver this sort of change in your organization. And sometimes it's managing as well, by the way. Don't get me wrong. Less mature teams need a little bit more help, right? And you have to help them. So what's interesting is those intelligent conversations, liberating structures is a great set of techniques. There's obviously Agile Coaching Institute and some of the work that they've been doing on coaching. There's some great stuff on facilitation, coaching, transparency. There's loads more stuff on the use of things like Kanban to get more transparency and flow. It's really good to start seeing that. I'm really excited by that, because as I hate these sort of like myopic sort of, we only worry about this. I like the fact that this role is now being exposed to a much broader set of skills and ideas than just they run the events, right?
Completely. It's growing into the position it's always been intended for, I believe.
Yeah, it's funny. When you talk to Ken,
it was probably artificially held down or back or whatever you like to put it, cornered in this operational part of the business. Yes, there's one too, but it's just a small part of the whole job description, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, totally. And when I talked to Ken, I was with Ken yesterday, and I was talking to him about the Scrum Master. I mentioned that I was doing this webinar today, and we're just drinking a cup of coffee, and he was eating cake like he does. He likes cake. And we were talking to Ken, and what was funny is he's like, yeah, the Scrum Master role was never intended to be an admin and just a manager and just a coach. The role is really, really important, but really, really hard. And then he started sort of describing some of his experiences, like at PTC or at Oracle or some other companies he was at, how challenging. I mean, they got through it, but it was like, oh my gosh, legacy systems, legacy processes, people in the wrong role, people, suppliers, outsourcing, all of these things make it hard. But we are starting to see more experienced people to maybe solve some of these problems. And that brings us, I guess, nicely to complementary practices. We asked this question this year on the survey because we're always interested what things we should be highlighting and the like. Obviously, Scrum.org brought out the Kanban class, the UX class, Professional Scrum with US PSU came out a few weeks ago, because we see design thinking and modern UX practices are crucial to building highly valuable products and solving highly complex problems. But I think we're not the only ones. We're starting to see a significant amount of complementary practices being used on top of the framework. So you still do Scrum, but you take advantage of the ideas of WIP limits from Kanban, for instance, and service level agreements from Kanban. I'm just making that up. It's up to you, obviously, if you do that. You look at continuous delivery and like from DevOps. You look at obviously test left and TDD, BDD from that community, and obviously XP. The ideas of the first book. We were talking to our publishers yesterday for the Professional Scrum series, and we're looking at some of the older books, and we got the Mike Beadle, Ken Schwaber first book, and it's all about XP and Scrum. It just shows you, I'm like, well, how did we forget some of this stuff? And obviously our Professional Scrum developer class doesn't forget it. So I obviously just haven't been thinking about it recently. But the ideas of spikes, the ideas of refactoring, the importance of, sort of like that pairing and transparency of development. All of these practices complement, because it increases transparency, it allows empiricism, allows self-organization and the like. So just because we're doing Scrum now, interestingly though, when you're doing Scrum, that constrains you. For instance, in Kanban, you've automatically got a WIP limit of the sprint, right? You understand that you've got this container. Those constraints you shouldn't break, but you should expose using these techniques. I don't know, Stefan, do you see this sort of like this practice of adopting practices and different approaches on top of the Scrum framework?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's another proof from my perspective how the whole framework is starting to mature, because it's reaching out, and now you understand these agnostic attitude towards extensions, right? I mean, no one in the Scrum guide you see that you can't have a Scrum board, something like that. On the contrary, I couldn't imagine organizing or help organize a Scrum team without a board. Work in progress limit, really helpful. Work item work age and etc. pp. Totally awesome.
Yeah, and
good reflection.
And so what's interesting though is that that tension's important though, because the tension. So the framework comes with certain constraints by its very nature. It reduces complexity by having a frequent cadence. The daily, the sprint, etc. It uses a backlog to manage work. It has a product owner to reduce. To allow focus and to allow us to actually deliver something, which encourages empiricism. That we has retrospective and sprint review. A sprint review is very, very important. These constraints, as it were, when you start looking at some of these other techniques, don't throw away those constraints. I mean, by all means, make sure they're very transparently visible, and that if that causes tension and causes you to go, well, Scrum might not be right for you, number one, but it sort of like use it in a complementary way. What I don't like to see is people throwing, oh, we did Scrum, it didn't work, now we're doing Kanban. Okay, by all means that could happen, but why didn't it work? What was it? Was it you couldn't get people to your sprint review? Well, Kanban's not going to solve that. In fact, it's going to make it harder, really, because you don't have that formal cadence, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that's an important message. Do you agree, Stefan?
Totally. We have a question from Arena. In complementary practices in Scrum, what were responses like about Lean? Is Lean viewed as something that has now fused with Scrum, so it's not mentioned, or is there another reason why we don't see it?
Oh, that's really, really interesting. I mean, we only picked a set of complementary practices and ideas. I could have had Gamba, or I could have had, Kaizen, or Kaizen and Gamba. Well, Gamba, maybe not, but Kaizen definitely is fundamental. It's retrospective review, right, et cetera, et cetera. Very, very important. The short answer is yes. Lean was, when Jeff went to Harvard after, they were working at Easel, and Jeff and Ken went off to their particular sort of areas and came back with the ideas that formed the basis of Scrum. Jeff went to those lean manufacturing, those guys, and really took those ideas and brought them back. Lean principles are at the heart of Scrum. Now, some of the practices, I highlighted a couple. Yes, we should have perhaps called them out separately, and we didn't. Interestingly, Scrum is practiced at Toyota. They talk about how the practices complement, Scrum, and how the ideas of Toyota and the like. Now, one interesting thing is waste. When the maniacal focus on waste is very important for Scrum, but for different reasons. It's not waste. The reason why we reduce waste is to deliver value more frequently, not because we care necessarily about waste. So sometimes it approaches things in a different way, but yes, you're very right. Lean, very fundamental part of Scrum. In fact, it was one of the basis, the foundations for building Scrum, and transparency and the like. The other thing that's interesting is the natural culture of lean and lean manufacturing, this idea of pushing down responsibility to the team, the ability you can pull the cord, the ACOR cord, that cord to stop production line. We have that in Scrum to create the values, create psychological safety, which creates transparency and trust and respect and openness, which enables empiricism, self-organization, and this continuous improvement mentality. So I would argue that they're great bedfellows. Sometimes some of the lean practices make you question some of your ideas, which is awesome as well. Stefan, you see lean in Germany. Obviously, lean is very big in the manufacturing world there, and Scrum is growing. So nice relationship.
There certainly is a basis for that. I mean, it's easier to talk to the folks who have a background in lean in whatever way, particularly from the manufacturing side, than if you just talk to the suits in the offices, because you don't have to explain a lot of things. What is waste, and why are we after continuous improvement, and why do we need to have feedback, and why do we have to be where the work is actually done and value created, and not just somewhere else pulling in reports. So that's really helpful. I think it's one of the driving factors here in Germany.
Now, one thing that's true of Lean and true of Scrum is it's very easy to get so focused on the practice, you forget the outcomes and the value. One thing that our new class, the UX class, highlights quite a lot is it's all about the outcomes, not the output. And one thing, so we spend so much time optimizing the flow, reducing the work time, time in motion, all this. You spend so much time focused on Moodoo that you forget value. And it's very, very important. And it's so easy to do that. Lean can be implemented in a mass production, industrial way, or it can be delivered in a digital, creative way. And those two things, I think sometimes Lean or Scrum can get destroyed by that, because you concentrate, for instance, in Scrum on velocity rather than on value, so in Lean, flow rather than outcomes, so I think that's an interesting point, but a great question. Thank you. Something worth talking about for sure.
Thank you, Reno.
So moving on to talk a little bit about Agile adoption, where people are. I guess this is no surprise. We just talked a little bit about the growing maturity, and interestingly, mature. Only 11% think they're mature. Now, that may be illustrative of the fact that the first thing that you learn, it's like martial arts, right? I've got a very good friend who's a fantastic martial artist, and black belt, can speak Japanese, and he said that he was a black belt and he went to Japan, and the first thing and he met this, the guys that he's like heroes, and he went in and talked to them, and they went, you're not really a black belt anymore. And they said it in a very nice way. And he started again. And what that taught him was humility, number one, but it also taught him that you're always on this journey to learning. So part of me is like, people that say we're mature and we've mastered this, ultimately don't really understand what this is, because frankly, our experience is you never master it. You're always learning and growing and the like. Which is interesting as well. Stalled, small percentage, that's great. Again, maybe a little bit illustrative of the people that would answer a survey about Scrum. They're sort of so annoyed with it, they wouldn't answer it. But the growing number is great, good to see. And obviously the waterfall, well, water scrum fall is still the reality in a lot of organizations, though a dwindling reality, at least in terms of how they admit it. It's sort of like, so, I think there's obviously sometimes still people doing it, but they're not necessarily admitting it. Stefan, this 42% growing, that's great, right?
Absolutely. I mean, from a perspective of our profession, great opportunities, not just to find a job, but the job you're really comfortable with. And I believe it offers a great potential for personal development. Where will I be in 2 or 5 years from now? There's so much to learn. And I still believe it's one of the most exciting jobs you can have. I'm always puzzled whenever I start with a new client. I start learning from the beginning again, almost. Yeah. So how is this organization run? What are these problems here? How can we tackle them? I really love this. It's like being an engineer without programming, which I totally suck at.
Yes, yes. And by the way, we're not saying that failed software developers, programmers should become Scrum Masters. By the way, that wasn't the message that Stefan was pushing.
No, absolutely not. This is just drivers.
Exactly, but good to see growing. And I think that sort of the point that Stefan made is a sound one. There's a lot of opportunity out there, ladies and gentlemen. And opportunity. So if you're unhappy in your organization, use this as an opportunity to go into an organization where you can try it and maybe you'll be less unhappy. This is a growing field and a growing profession, I think. Which now I'm obviously a little bit biased here, so I'm not going to spend a great deal of time on this, but certification, this sort of validation, Ken is a big fan of validation, and if you're a professional, you have to have a third party validate. He believes in that. Again, our audience may be a little biased, but the data that we see on the website and from some of our other friends in other certifying organizations, we see that certification is important and the value of it is increasing. You'll see that 45% had 2 or more, 22% that 45% had just 2. That's a significant percentage, and 83% had completed some sort of formal Scrum training that was certification oriented, which is good to see, because how else can you get transparency without some sort of measure of that, right? Let's talk about money though now. Show me the money. I mean, this is kind of interesting as well. This is the general sort of aggregated across all regions salary information. What you see is that 50 grand and 75 grand. Now, you could argue that some people may be reporting in euros or in US dollars, and maybe the data is a little screwed because of that. But generally, you see that distribution in the middle. But it's still, a lot of people on the high end as well, more so than, maybe on the lower end. It's good. Salaries are good for Scrum Masters, I think, is the message here. Stefan, you do this every year, but particular focus on salaries. What are you seeing around this?
We see a healthy increase. So let me put it this way: the salaries reflect the growing appreciation of the profession. So this is a good trend. I mean, it's not just opportunities for personal growth; it's also a lucrative opportunity. So I totally believe that this is a very good choice if you like to work with people, and solve problems, hard ones.
Yeah. Well, it's a profession, right? So you need to get paid for it. You need to put food on the table. It can't just be a fabulous pastime. And I think what we're seeing is that the salaries are supporting that. And then if you're looking at the regional variation, it would imply between Europe and North America, there is a little bit more of a bias. maybe us Americans are a little bit, fat and happy, as it were. We get paid a little bit more. Again, not totally sure with the survey being totally representative. However, this might be illustrative also of some of the emerging markets that Scrum is now being practiced in Europe, particularly in the eastern side of Europe, and some of the markets like we're seeing a lot growth in Portugal and Spain and Italy and the like, where salaries might be a little bit less than the other northern parts of Europe, where there'll be a little bit more. I think we've got a little bit of an anomaly with Oceania because the survey sample data is relatively small. However, it made me want to get on a plane and move to Australia instantly. And then Asia, well, on the lower end, heavy bias towards India there, I think. So you'll see, obviously India, the salaries are lower there. Africa's interesting, again, relatively small sample size in compared to the others, but because of South Africa in particular, and because of the sort of where it's being practiced, like certain more, I don't know, World Bank kind of stuff, and more of the sort of epicenters, maybe sort of parts of the Middle East or in Egypt or like. So again, sort of biased, I think, a little bit towards that, because it's more illustrative of the European survey as salaries in Africa and South America, which is a huge growth market. Interestingly, we're seeing around Scrum. Brazil, Mexico, Peru, who knew, and Argentina are like huge. We see Scrum training classes across the whole of South America, which is very, very exciting. I know you're more familiar with the European data, right, Stefan? But what do you think? Does this tell us anything?
I mean, relatively, it's the same development as all over the place, but we're just starting from a lower position. It's really interesting to see. I mean, in Berlin, salaries are significantly lower by comparison to the States, given a comparable position. So you really have to take a dive if you want to live in this beautiful city. But I see overall that the tendency is positive, and that we see significant increases on a yearly basis, particularly if you are experienced. If you have a few years of experience on your belt and you have invested in your own education, so went in deep instead of broad, right? So in terms of Scrum.org, you start with a PSM1, then you have a PSM2, and maybe you're working on a PSM3. So this is the right trajectory that you should consider from a professional development perspective. And then you can't avoid being paid above market salary.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think you're right about the maturity of the market. I think North America is a little bit more mature than parts of Europe. Obviously, Europe is a collection of different places, as is North America, but so we'll see some difference there. Now, this is I actually was really happy about this. My opinions about diversity and the importance of having diverse teams. Obviously, gender is a key factor into that. I'm always very disappointed. In fact, I'm excited. The training class that's just going on next to me, it's about 50-50, which is awesome, because it just makes for a better experience for everybody, whether it's gender equality, or whether it's, different from different races or different sexual orientations or whatever. We need diverse teams to solve these really blimming complex problems, right? So gender is a key part of it. And for the Scrum Master role, we're starting to see a change here where obviously there's a smaller number of female Scrum Masters, fair enough, we get that. But their salaries tend to be higher than their equivalent male. So I'm not sure we've jumped the gender gap here. There's still obviously, and our data's only, 2,500 people. But as a female, I'm excited that Scrum Mastery might be the place that you can contribute in a fair way, as it were, get the equivalent sort of salary. I don't know. I was excited by this data. Stefan, what do you think?
Absolutely. This is I believe the greatest outcome of the whole survey, that we see this crossing the gender pay gap. It's really amazing to see that this is. I mean, we're really front running the industry here. And
I
I
think so.
think that's something we can be proud of.
And that's interesting. Often the front running, we see Scrum and the adoption of Agile and digital working practices, the concepts of lean and the like being applied now to complex problems. This is for most organizations, they're forming teams in a new way. They're building, whether they call them teams or squads or whatever, they're building this organization from the bottom up. This gives a great opportunity to use that to throw away some of those outmoded ideas that may have just become the norm, particularly around gender, salary disequality. And I think this is really, really exciting. The more people that we can pay in a fair way, the more females we encourage to join teams and be part of this story, the better we deliver and the more value we deliver, which is great. And yeah, biased here. Yes, certification matters. Now, I'll try to be unbiased for a second, but obviously I work in an organization that drives certification, uses it to validate learning and makes empiricism part of it. But one thing that's interesting is that certification may not be the cause, it may be the symptom, meaning people that actually invest in their own development and invest in, passing tests and proving it and learning and getting feedback ultimately see the rewards for that. We don't certify just because we want to make loads of money and all that kind of stuff. We certify because we believe that transparency and feedback are crucial to successfully delivering value to the to your own personal development, right? So, and this is perhaps illustrative of the fact that investing in yourself, doing tests, getting transparency, asking people, hey, how did I do? Actually benefits you ultimately in terms of financial remuneration. Stefan, what do you think? You can be a little less biased than me.
Well, I do believe that investing in yourself is the best investment you can make. This is not just referring to certifications like PSM2 or 3, for example. So I'm just bought a new training course for training from the back of the room because I believe it's an amazing way of teaching people. And I'm really looking forward to that. And if this is reflected in your personal CV or in your profile that you're actually using to reach out to to people and organizations who may provide a new opportunity for you, this is precisely what they want to see. I mean, if you're an engineer, it's simple. You have a GitHub profile, and I can have a look on which projects you're contributing, what you're doing, how your code is, etc. But we can't do this. I mean, it simply doesn't work this way, unless you have maybe a blog or you have a YouTube channel or do something in that way, or you're running a meetup in your local meetup in your community. Okay, then you have a bit of a track record. But otherwise, certifications are a great way to just show, hey, I'm serious about this and I want to invest in myself.
I think it's so. One thing that, so I spend a lot of time as the CEO of Scrum.org talking to, I don't know, call them professional governmental type bodies, universities, these kind of things. And one thing that they're wrestling with is the implications of the gig economy on the future of work. And in the US, because of healthcare and some other things, it's sort of undermined in inverted commas. There's a lot of constraints to it. The other constraint is professional development. Like, who's responsible for it? Who takes ownership of your professional development? And it's recently with a large car manufacturer who basically said very obviously that it's a key part of the value proposition to allow people the time and the space and the support, community, chapter, whatever you want to, guild, whatever you want to call them, to develop professionally. It's also the best way of scaling practices, techniques, skills, and dare I say agility into your organization is this continuous investment in people, into yourself, and into others. So, I mean, obviously certification is just the tip of that iceberg, but that kind of balancing those ideas as we take responsibility for delivering our own value in the world is crucial. You're a lifelong learner. One thing that Scrum has taught me is that I'll always be a learner. I always put some time every week to learning something new. I was just recently Reinerson's stuff around cost of delay, which is really smart stuff, and I barely understand it, but I'm trying to teach myself it because as a product owner, I kind of care about that, right, around my portfolio of things. So professional development is crucial. Okay, so we're coming to the end, Stefan. This has been awesome as always. I sort of highlight, this is sort of, I wrote a little summary side of this, sort of like just to remind everybody of why we've been here and maybe some of the messages, Scrum Master role, important, growing in importance, crucial, whether the job title is called Scrum Master or whatever, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, these people that are driving change, that are changing the way in which we approach work, complex work, are crucial in the organizations. And we're seeing with salaries, with development, with experience, with exposure to different practices, that this role is being invested in. It's driving change in organization. That change is scaling, whether you call it agile, scaling agile or whatever, across organizations with multiple frameworks, with multiple ideas, which is great. And the role is maturing. We're seeing some changes in demographics and wage disparity, which is great. We're seeing complementary practices. Kanban is a great example as people try to understand how sprints and flow fits into a broader value stream. And of course, professional development and certification matters. That was a sort of summary. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Stefan.
It was a very nice wrap up. I just want to point out we have 4 questions left. And
let's ask a
we have
question then. We've
yeah,
got
yeah,
a
yeah.
few minutes on our time box.
Perfect. So Charlie is asking, what do you guys think about the Scrum Master role in the UK, considering all that is going on with Brexit? Does your research reveal anything outstanding?
Oh my God, Charlie, Brexit. Well, I'm actually going to be in the UK next week and the week after. I'm based in Boston, though I'm British by then. Our data didn't really illustrate anything unique about the UK. In fact, it really did illustrate one thing that I guess it's not unique, but it's sort of like UK is halfway between the US and Europe with respect to salaries and skills and the like. They're sort of a bit. They've got their they've got their foot in both. With respect to Brexit, obviously, Brexit, like any of these change. Obviously, we have Trump and some of the populist type movements here in the US. It increases complexity, right? So obviously, Charlie, you're probably seeing the increase in complexity because of the amount of unknown. For instance, what are the trade regulations going to be? Imagine if you're a bank in the UK at the moment, you're currently dealing with European law, but what happens, for the transfer of information? How does the clearing banks work in this new world? Complexity. And I think it just sort of like increases the value of the role in countries like the UK. In general, though, we do see more a higher percentage of take up of Scrum Master training and certification in the UK. It's one of our strongest and growing markets. I was actually on a call this morning to a UK training organization. So though Brexit, but who knows what's going to happen with Brexit? And that increase of complexity and unknown increases the value of Scrum and the importance of Scrum, hey? I don't know if that answered the question, Stefan. Charlie, feel free to ping me, and good luck in, 10 days or something?
Yeah, I think 29th.
Yeah,
9
so
days, something
9
like that.
days. I guess that's a whip limit. Anyway.
Okay, the next one, Ariel is asking, hi, would like to know your thoughts on how Scrum can be complementary to DevOps and how hot topic SREs as how Scrum explicitly can include Ops and the way we should thought these frameworks while trending into product-oriented organizations, not necessarily having projects and sometimes turning more into continuous delivery with lean Kanban and leaving sprint planning behind. Sorry for butchering this question.
Wow, that was a question, wasn't it? I'm going to cut to the end and then come back to the beginning. And Stefan, please feel free. I know you feel like you're just reading questions. Feel free to answer this as well. So continuous delivery does not negate the purpose of a sprint. A sprint is not a release cycle, it's a planning cycle. And the reason why we have a planning cycle, 2-week planning cycle, if you're doing a 2-week sprint, is because of a number of reasons. The most important one is because it reduces complexity. If you're doing continuous delivery, when do you plan? do you plan continuously? Well, you can't plan continuously. So it's likely that you're going to put some sort of planning cycle in anyway, because of the complexity that planning continuously would do. The other important point is planning needs to be influenced by stakeholders and feedback, right? Now, you gather that feedback throughout a sprint, but you come together as a group in two events. One is called the sprint review, right? So you sit down or stand up, I don't care how you're doing it, or virtually stand up or whatever, and you look at the work, you look at what's happened, you look at feedback from, instrumentation, your new relic logs, your Datadog logs, whatever, your customer feedback, the help desk, support tickets, all the feedback you need, but you also get stakeholders in that have that. Now, stakeholders aren't continuously available, otherwise they'll be actually not that valuable, honestly. So again, this is the reason why we do that. And then, of course, you have the retrospective, which really focuses on how you're working. So continuous delivery does not negate the use of sprints. Now, you may find that your stakeholders are sitting on the same desk as you. You may find that you have a very capable, mature team that's capable of dealing with that. And then maybe you move away from sprints. Fair enough. My experience, though, is that structure, that having that regular planning cadence, really, really helps drive change. So to bring that sort of like back, continuous delivery is obviously one of the key parts of modern DevOps and the work of Jez Humble and the like, and Gene Kim, awesome stuff. What's interesting is DevOps is sort of fundamental to getting feedback into the cycle and to building cross-functional teams that can deliver value. So we've always believed that Scrum and DevOps were natural bedfellows. In fact, when I take it to Jeff or Ken or any of the Scrum luminaries in the world, they're like, well, of course it is. Right? Now, what's interesting is, though, a lot of thought leaders want to drive change, right? So they try to create a new version of Scrum that's all about DevOps. I don't see the value of that. One of the most important things that we do is we start with something. Now, if that has to change, fair enough, but you start with something. So Scrum and DevOps are perfect bedfellows. And remember, the sprint is not a release cycle. It's a planning cycle. Stefan, have you got anything to add on DevOps?
No, I believe it's a perfect pair, made in heaven, this relationship. So it simply belongs together. I'm wondering why people ask, is it Scrum or DevOps? I mean, it certainly belongs together. And I totally agree. It's not we're not trying to introduce a stage gate through the back door by having the sprint review at the end. This is not the purpose. We want to elicit feedback and figure out what we're going to do next, because next morning we start over. So I think it's perfectly fine and belongs together.
Exactly. And if you want more details, I think it was Andriana, right? Or there's a really interesting white paper on Scrum.org that I wrote, working with DevOps.com, interestingly, yeah, and the DOE, DevOps Institute, and actually tried to highlight that. And we came from our own worlds and we described how it all fitted together. Anyway, so not that I'm pitching my own work there. So we've got two more questions. We've only got a couple of minutes. So Stefan, hopefully that answered your question.
What are the chances of project managers becoming Scrum Masters and succeeding in the career?
Oh my gosh. So interestingly, we did pull some other data, by the way, and we found that project managers' salaries versus Scrum Master salaries, Scrum Masters are doing better. So if you're a project manager, become a Scrum Master. Okay, but that wasn't the question. The question was, can a project manager is it a natural thing? Yeah. If you're a great project manager, you'll probably make a great Scrum Master. If you're a rubbish project manager, you'll probably make a rubbish Scrum Master. It's as simple as that. The skills of working with people, understanding, etc., very important. Now, but remember, this isn't a management responsibility or job. That doesn't mean you won't do some managing, but ultimately the way in which Scrum succeeds is self-organizing teams, right? That can continuously improving, delivering value in an empirical way. What's interesting about manager, the role of the manager, is often we encourage them to be the glue that tells people what to do to facilitate and deliver value. They're responsible for the value. That isn't the case. The Scrum Master's role is to oil the machine, to help the machine be successful, that is the delivery team, development team. And so it does require some change. So one of the biggest challenges of project managers becoming Scrum Master isn't that they haven't got the skills and they're not going to be awesome. It's the fact that historically the expectations of the organization on them was to tell people what to do and to be accountable for that. So you've got to flip that. Their job is to create an environment where the team's accountable for delivering value. The product owner defines the order of that value to be delivered. And the Scrum Master's job is to make sure it's sort of happening. And so that requires a change. But often it isn't a change in the project manager's head. It's a change in which the way in which they are treated by the organization they work in. Hopefully that answered your question. That wasn't bad, was it, Stefan? I thought I did a good job.
No, it was really good. It was good. Okay, so the last one from Annie.
So, okay, Annie, right? Was that the
Annie? Yes. You're not recommending for poor software engineers to turn into Scrum Masters, but what does your research say? Do Scrum Masters need to have a software engineering background, or is this profession also open to people with very different backgrounds? I have no clue about engineering. I'm really bad at. I mean, the only things I ever managed was to set up a bit MySQL and run some PHP script to put data in and out. And after that, they told me, Stefan, leave it. Yes, it's okay. It's fine. Do something else. I studied chemistry. So, and I think I'm quite acceptable in my role, so. I think
he's living proof that you don't need a technical, needs to be technical to be a great Scrum Master, and we see that over and over again. In fact, the more diverse, the more different points of view, different perspectives. You've got a lot of technical people on your team, right? If you're working in a software space or any technical space, remember you got to deliver value, right? So that requires you to have technical skills. You don't need to duplicate those skills. What you need to do is appreciate those skills and empathize with those skills and empathize with the people that have got those skills. You need to be able to understand where they're coming from. You need to be able to listen to them, ask questions of them. But you don't need to be, it's like, a great soccer coach probably wasn't the greatest soccer player, or football if you're in Europe. What you see though is now they understand it, they empathize with it, but they come at it from a different point of view. So rejoice in the differences and use that to explain. Now, does that mean that good Scrum Masters can't be good software engineers as well? No, it doesn't. However, where you're focusing should be different. The biggest challenge of a good software engineer becoming a Scrum Master is that they often want to help them by doing the work. Now, that doesn't make them very successful necessarily. Instead, a good Scrum Master would get the right support, would get the right help, would try to resolve those impediments of somebody delivering great work or whatever, tries to coach them on the questions they should be asking instead. So yes, great, diverse, different Scrum Masters are awesome, but so do good engineers sometimes. Cool. So we've hit our time box, Stefan.
2 minutes late, but I think it's okay.
Oh dear, 2 minutes late. Well, this has been an awesome experience. Hey, by the way, if you're interested in the learning sort of path, the things that we think are important, if you go to the digital learning paths that are online, also download, obviously, download the materials that support this, the Scrum Master Survey results and the like, and then we'll be getting ready to rerun this next year to get some data and rerunning this presentation in about a year's time. It's the first day of spring. Maybe we can make this a tradition. You never know.
Yeah, I think so. I'm looking forward to it.
That'd be great. Well, thanks ever so, Stefan, for your help, and thank you for the help with the survey. Appreciate the conversation we've had today. If you've got any questions, you know where we're at, and obviously reach out to our broader community. We're all here to help to improve the profession every day. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot for your time.